Caitriona, tell me about now. So you work with clients now. Tell me a bit more. So you've got your lovely Instagram page. So there you are, giving lots of information and explaining astrology. I love the way you do your videos, by the way. They must take you hours. But
They
so
don't really. I'm getting a bit quicker doing them. In the beginning, they did take me hours, but now I'm less of a perfectionist about it, you know?
mhm. And so you're teaching astrology on your Instagram page and you're seeing clients. So talk to me about how do clients work with you? How does that happen?
Yeah, so when I started my page originally, I had no intention of doing readings professionally. I was just going to teach astrology. I didn't even expect anybody to come to me for readings. I had no expectations around it at all. I had no
Mhm,
expectations that I was going to set up a business. I was just going to set up an astrology page and create a following around astrology and educate people, educate the masses. And
mhm,
then one day I said I would offer readings. So I just put it up on my stories, readings, €20, which
mhm,
is, peanuts for
mm,
readings. And to my surprise, a lot of people responded and said, yeah, I'd love a reading. And then those people went and told other people about the readings, who told other people about the readings. And it went from there. And next thing I know, I'm flooded, I'm swamped. And I remember I read for a girl who had 100,000 followers. She's a big influencer in Ireland. And I read for her, I think she paid €50 for her reading. I had kind of gotten a bit of sense at that stage, Marion. I said, okay, I'm going to charge what I'm worth. And she went on her page and told her 100K followers. And next thing I had a couple of hundred people extra added to my Instagram overnight. And then I had all these bookings and I got totally overwhelmed and a bit stressed. And I would say, I can't read for you for 6 months. I can't read for you for 7, 8 months. And this waiting list came out of nowhere.
mhm,
And I was kind of a victim of my own success. So I made the decision, okay, I'm going to up my prices. I'm going to charge what I'm worth because people like this stuff and I'm
mhm.
getting great reviews. And then I said, okay, I'm going to create a website because what was happening was I was managing all the bookings through my DMs and I
Oh, that must have been a headache. Your phone
yeah,
must
it
have gone
was a
ping
headache.
every minute.
I wasn't expecting any of this. So I was like my own manager. I was managing, I was arranging the times, I was the whole lot, the headache of it. So energetically, I needed a space for the bookings to go so that I could go to my day job and not worry about the bookings. So I had this beautiful calendar and everything, and that was amazing. So normally when people come to me, how it works is there is a bit of a wait if you want an in-depth birth chart reading, but I always say, a reading comes to you when you need it most. That's my mantra in life. And I always say less is more with readings. You don't need to be going for 100 readings or you don't need to be going for multiple readings. And I always say as well, an astrologer shouldn't be a crutch.
Mhm,
You can't walk through life with a crutch. Limit the amount of readings you go for. And I say that with everything, with tarot, with runes, everything, you know. So when I get a client's details, I run their chart, I give them the choice on the booking form. If there's something specific they want me to look at, I'll give it particular attention at the end of the reading. So if that's career, money, love, health, but they don't have to tell me anything. And a lot of the time they leave it blank and tell me nothing. So if they tell me nothing, I run the chart. And the first thing I do always, Mary, because it's the way my astrology teacher taught me, and I love this way, I go in and I tell them, first of all, how much earth, air, fire, and water I see
mhm,
and what they are lacking. And usually, 90% of the time, it's very rare to get a birth chart that's balanced. 90% of the time, we're all lacking at least one element or we're lacking one modality. So, the way there's the cardinal signs, the fixed and the mutables.
mhm,
And we'll tell them what their strongest energy is and what, like, I perceive as their weakest energy and how they might have compensated in life. And I also give them remedies. So, for example, if somebody is lacking a particular element, I'll give them the remedy for how to redress the imbalance in their life. And then I will move through the chart, and I always start with the ascendant and any planets that are conjunct that. I'll go through then the chart ruler. So if you were a Sag rising, I will look at Jupiter and all its aspects to describe, some of the big themes in your life. And then I kind of go through all the angles of the chart. I'm obsessed with the cross of incarnation. I always have been. So I'll go from the ascendant to the descendant to the IC to the MC. And I know people are like, what's she on about? I'm literally talking about this cross shape
yeah, yeah.
in your chart.
Mm,
And I will kind of discuss those. And then when I've that discussed, I go through, all of the main planets then in kind of a clockwise motion. Sometimes I'll jump around the chart as a typical, Sagittarius. I'll jump if something jumps out at me, but I'll kind of discuss the planets kind of in isolation and also with their aspects. And I love degree theory as well. It's kind of a pretty modern thing that some people don't like it, some people do. And sometimes if there's significant degrees repeated in the chart, I see like significant patterns and things repeated in life. And I'll read the chart in Placidus and in whole sign. And I know it's kind of a weird way to do things, but I have Chiron and Gemini. So I will say to the person, so like you have your sun in the first house, in whole sign, but in Placidus you have it in the second house. And this is how it might manifest. And I give them the two things. And I do that for all the placements, particularly if they move. And I'm able to do it in my head. I don't, when you get to a certain point in astrology, you don't need to be swapping the charts. And I think that's probably why I have a good success rate with accuracy with the charts, because I'm giving them a very nuanced picture of their energy. And I do a little kind of a transit thing. Then generally at the end, I tell them like where Saturn is or Pluto is, and the big players, the big hitters, and what the themes might be coming up for them right now. And and sometimes if I see a really difficult chart, only if I feel intuitively guided, I'll open up their human design, Mary, which is
okay.
50% human design. But sometimes if I feel like someone's got a really difficult chart and they've maybe a very old soul, because I say all old souls have a difficult chart, I'll also say, okay, by the way, this is your human design, and I'm just going to give you the taste of it. This will also give you another key to unlocking, your destiny. And I love numerology too. And sometimes I would do that as well, but I generally don't have the time. By the time I've gotten through the birth chart, I'm generally like, it's a long reading, the whole birth chart experience with me. And then I record it all. It's like a little recording. I send it off to the person and they listen to it like a podcast, and they can listen to it as many times as they want and take notes. There is no interaction with me. And I know a lot of astrologers might disagree with doing it that way, but I made a decision in the beginning that like I'm very sensitive to other people's energy, and I didn't feel that I would be able to accurately read a chart with precision if I had a person looking at me, putting me under pressure or asking me questions and throwing me off. I love to get totally focused and absorbed and lost in the chart. I go into the chart, I'm in there, and when I'm finished, I come out, and I usually kind of try to clear myself of the other person's energy and step out of it. But it's not really a consultation with me. It's kind of, it's more of a, this is what I offer to you. It's an offering I'm giving the client rather than a consultation experience. And some people love it. I'm sure other people might prefer, a more interactive approach with an astrologer. It doesn't suit my energy style. And I guess I have Mercury square Pluto, and I just find I can go in really deep, but I can't be disturbed. I'm in there.
Yes, I do a thing called pre-records because of the podcast. So that's for people that live in a different country and they can't book a session with me and get a time that will suit the two of us. But some clients definitely want to pre-record anyway because they want to be able to listen back to it. And it doesn't suit me. I mean, I do them. It isn't the biggest type of appointments that I have for myself. Most of mine are live, talking to the person, and we'll go through the stuff. However, the people that I do them for, I'll find out from them beforehand what in particular they need to know at the moment and answer that for them in the recording. But I mean, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. There's no right or wrong way. You have to do what suits you.
Yeah, your Gemini moon, I'm sure you get very you're feeding your Gemini moon every time there's that back and forth interaction. Whereas my Aries moon, absolutely loves being alone with the birth chart. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I'm here alone with this birth chart and I'm just in heaven. But yeah, it's all about, what works best for your energy style. And I know I'd listened to Chris Brennan, the great American astrologers.
As you podcast, the astrology podcast.
About the interactive experience and consultations with a client. And I'm sure it's great practice to do a consultation process, and maybe I'll get to a point in my career where I'm more comfortable with that, but I'm not comfortable with it right now and I have plenty of clients, and people are happy with the offering. So maybe in the future I'll consider it. I have done face-to-face birth charts. I did a workshop before, and it was great. I did some face-to-face charts, but it was a little bit overwhelming. I did have to like study the charts beforehand, and it was a bit overwhelming. The person in front of me and I got great feedback on it, and they loved it, the participants. But it was intense for me to have a lot of people workshopping and doing their charts. And I do feel like people get more bang for their buck with a one-on-one kind of experience.
Yes, and in your case, because you're taking the time to go through everything that's in the chart, you're covering everything anyway. You know, like you said, it's interesting what you said earlier, that you don't need to have readings all the time. I do have to discourage some clients from booking every week.
Yeah. And I remember when I was starting my business, I read for a girl, and she was like, "Oh, that was amazing. You knew everything. You read me like a book. You knew so much. Could I keep you on retainer?" And I'd never even heard that expression before. And I said, "How do you mean?" And she said, "So basically," she said, "like, you'd read my transits every month, and I'd consult with you, and I'd pay you for this." And I thought about it, and I went, "Oh no, this would be a very like dangerous path for me to go down," because I said I'd become her crutch. And as an Aries moon,
you won't want to be any crutches.
Can't be anyone's crutch. Like, I'm like, no, like, I'm going to kick that crutch. I'll make you crawl before I give you a crutch. So I have clients as well that will come into my DMs, and they'll have had an awful day, and it's all about boundaries too. And you have to be compassionate as an astrologer too, and you listen to their problems. But I'll always say to them, and they'll say, "Oh, I need another reading, or I'm booking in for," and sometimes they will ask me beforehand, "Should I book in?" And I will say to them, you don't need, it's been less than maybe 6 months since I read for you. Do you really need another reading? Like, sometimes I say to clients, we need to honor the mystery of our lives unfolding. And that sounds really ironic coming from an astrologer. But like, I've looked at my own astrology. I've looked at my zodiacal releasing. I've looked at my secondary progressions. I've gone and looked at them all. And even I can't predict my own future. Sometimes I get caught off guard because I'm not objective about my own chart. I don't have that objectivity. And I'm so busy doing other people's charts, I don't even notice that my car is about to break down. And then I look back retrospectively, and I'm like, there it is. That's the transit that broke my car. That's the transit that caused my illness. That's the transit that caused the dispute. And I think there's a lovely sacredness to, like, and Chris Brennan touches on this too. Do no harm as an astrologer, allow the mystery of life to unfold. Tell stuff that's constructive and helpful, but also as astrologers, we see some stuff, and there'll always be a degree of keeping some stuff back and knowing what to say and what not to say. And that's a huge skill. And that's something, can it be taught? Can it be learned? I'm not sure. I think some people have that skill, Mary. They have an innate, intuitive, empathetic skill of knowing when to be quiet. And when to say, because if we say every single thing we see, sometimes we can do harm. And there's great power, in this beautiful gift of astrology, and we have to learn how to harness the gift to do no harm, just to do good, to help support people. Particularly see a negative transit, or something we might perceive as challenging coming up,
Yes, and also, I do point out to people if there is going to be something coming up, but it depends what the planet is and what can they do about it, because there's some things you can do something about things and other things you can't, because it's part of your sort of soul progression and stuff. But changing the subject slightly, you've got Uranus near to your ascendant, and then you worked with a guy called Matt, who calls himself
the Uranian astrologer. And I'll tell you an even better story, Mary.
Go on.
When I got into astrocartography, I started looking at my astrocartography, and a friend of mine who was also in the class said, "Oh my God, Caitriona, do you not see?" And I said, "What?" She said, Matt is born in Turkey. The town in Turkey where Matt was born, my Saturn line in astrocartography runs right through that town. And I have Saturn in Sagittarius, and I said, "Oh my God, he was meant to teach me astrology. Like, this
Mm.
was the man. And I waited a long time before I took like formal lessons. I taught myself for years. I taught myself
Mm.
badly. I'll admit that. You know, anybody who's
Mhm.
taught themselves astrology, we all make mistakes. We teach ourselves badly. But it's a beautiful process too. And I do think it's good to get to a place where you're going to astrology classes and you have some degree of astrology knowledge.
It's very helpful. I taught myself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to be going in completely blind. So when I started maths class, I had a huge wealth of astrology built up, and I had been taught by, I say, 100 different astrologers, because there were so many astrologers all over the world that I was admiring and emulating and watching on YouTube and reading about in magazines and papers and podcasts. And then by the time I found Matt, I was
Mhm.
like, I always say, when the student is ready, the master appears.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
So like, he was doing his first ever astrology class when I found him.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you caught him right at the beginning.
Yeah, so I was one of his first students, and I had all these different pockets of astrology, and he just tied them together for me. I couldn't really, I was a bit, as you say, a sun sign astrologer. I was terrible at aspects, or at least I perceived myself as terrible. I said to him, I want to know, like, what does it mean if a person has Mercury square Saturn? He was trying to explain to me, like, you need to know the nature of Mercury, you need to know the nature of Saturn, you need to know the nature of a square, and then you need to make the interpretation. And I was like, but how? But how? I wanted, of course, like everyone, I wanted a cookbook.
Yes.
Is Mercury square Saturn. Now, because I've read so many charts, I realize Mercury square Saturn can be so many different things.
Mhm.
Why would I give a cookbook interpretation to anyone? I
Yeah,
need to,
because it depends what signs they're in, what modalities they're in, what houses they're
ah,
in,
yeah,
what
and if there's
element they're in.
any other aspects to the Saturn or the Mercury. So now I guess I understand why I needed to wait that long. So yeah, I was got formal training from Matt, and I'm also trained in Uranian dial astrology, which is like a more advanced, another level of astrology. But I don't currently market myself as a Uranian astrologer because I feel I need to practice more. It's very, very complicated, and I feel that there's so much in your normal astrology, Mary.
Mhm.
Mind if I go into Uranian dial? It's like another level of astrology that's very, very scarily accurate, to be honest. And the thing is about accuracy in astrology, I don't think accuracy is something that should be our primary goal. I like the idea of astrology for understanding my psychology and how I work and how I operate. But I know that Vedic astrologers place a high degree of emphasis on accuracy and prediction and timing. I know that Uranian astrologers place, a lot of emphasis on prediction and timing. And I just think some things in life we're better off maybe not knowing all of the
Not
things.
knowing. Yeah, I mean, I don't do too much in the way of predictions. I ask people because I'm working with a lot of people that are in a crisis at the moment
Mhm.
and want to find a way out of the crisis that they're in. So obviously it'll be a transit for, I don't know, Saturn. It's going to go on for another 6 months or whatever. But I think if you start making predictions, you might be making self-fulfilling prophecies for people. You could be, don't get me started about people that get told they're going to die or get squished by a car or something by other people that then come to see me, and I go, no, actually that isn't the case, because you can't predict those types of things. I don't think personally, and I've done a whole podcast now, I don't think predictions are particularly helpful. I think what is helpful is making the person feel better now and empowered so they can go to where they want to be. So they want to be married or have children or get a job or move house or go to another country or learn something new. So what do we need to do now to be able to do that? So what parts in your chart will help you be able to achieve that? But for me to sit here and go, oh, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, that's such that, that is probably what old-fashioned astrologers did, and that might be what they wanted to do a long time ago. But that is, I know, quite respect other people that do it, but that isn't what I do myself. I've got a bit of analogy to produce. I think it's better to feel good now, because anyway, tomorrow doesn't exist. This is where predictions fall down. I mean, I do Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie and
Mhm.
living in the now and all of this. So tomorrow doesn't exist, and yesterday's just a memory. Yesterday's not a thing unless you're a historian. What all you have is the now. And so how can we make you feel good now and focused on what you want to do, and so that everything's gone away that might have hurt you or upset you or whatever. Because the things that people bring to a consultation, which is slightly different from, a pre-record, because they might not tell you what might have happened. But a lot of the consultations I work with people that has unending trauma is what I'm working with constantly, which is fine because that's what I'm trained to help people with. However, staying in that trauma isn't helpful for anyone. So then you have to look, well, what nice aspects have you got? Oh, you've got a lovely thing going on between your Uranus and your Venus, or you've got something really cushy going on between your sun sign and your Pluto, or whatever. Let's use those nice strong things in your chart. That those are the things that will allow you to get out of those difficult places. But astrology is so helpful. For me, I found it answered life, the universe, and everything. What was astrology like for you when you learned it? What did it bring to you that you didn't have before?
So I'll be really honest and say that when I kind of like got into my birth chart first and learned some things in it, I didn't like everything I saw. Mary. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't.
Okay.
I went, oh, and I had a little bit of, okay, how can I explain this? I always say, like, astrology, a good astrologer will put hope back into your heart, okay? And remember, I was teaching myself astrology in the beginning and modeling through my birth chart and dealing with internet interpretations and, maybe cheap interpretations, we'll call them, and fatalistic interpretations. And I remember learning, I read an interpretation of Venus sextile Chiron, and it said, my Venus is in an exact sextile with Chiron. And it said, this is a person who experiences difficulties with relationships. And I remember just reading it and be like, that's it? That's it? Like, what? Like, nothing helpful, nothing to, like, this is a person actually, like, who can heal other people in relationships. This is another person. This is the person who actually is healing gifts. This is the person who could potentially become an astrologer. This is a person who could go into holistic medicine, like all of these other different things. This is a person who could potentially attract people into their life who need healing. This is a person that has a lot of wounding that, might be mirrored back to her through some of her platonic or romantic relationships. But I didn't get that. And I remember like reading that aspect and getting very upset, being like feeling a sense of doom. And that's why I think like we have such a sense of duty around astrology now, that like we need to protect and preserve it and make sure that we don't let AI or other, apps pollute people's minds with these interpretations, because it was an app actually that taught me that. And I remember my Gemini sister said, close that app, delete that app. I was like, no, I'm learning astrology.
It is the one thing that I recently again did a podcast on that about app interpretations, and I'm just in the middle of writing an article for the Astrological Association, and I'm mentioning there about a podcast listener who had got an app interpretation of her child's chart, and it was about Chiron and that the child would be sexually abused. She was reading an adult interpretation for a child, and there's no, that isn't going to happen. And I had to explain to her, I'm sorry, that was an app, and I'm really sorry that you read that, but it's not true. Anyway, don't get me started on that subject because it'll go on for
regulate this, isn't it? You see,
there's no way of regulating it. Forget it.
And then like, yeah, there are actually some good apps out there. I will say that there are some apps, but I always say to people, with a bit of experience and time, you can look at these interpretations and not perceive them as fatalistic and not take them to heart and not see it as being doomed. But I remember I saw lots of things I didn't like in my birth chart. Like I saw Jupiter squared Chiron. I didn't see all my beautiful aspects. I didn't see my Venus trine Uranus. I didn't see Jupiter as my chart ruler. What a gift.
Yeah.
I didn't see, my
lucky bunny.
Yeah, I didn't see my
and Jupiter isn't retrograde either.
Yeah, it's not retrograde either. Like my Mars in Capricorn, yes, my Mars is retrograde, but Mars in Capricorn, oh my God, like it's such an incredible placement to have. Like, how honored am I to have that? And my Aries moon, okay, not the easiest placement, but like ultimately my favorite placement in my birth chart. I love my Aries moon so much. Like it's gotten me through so many things in life. It's sustained me. It's that fire that just won't ever go out. And I just said, like, it's that fire inside of your heart there, when you have an Aries moon. I always say it's such a gift to be like a fiery moon sign. I'll never ever take it for granted. Even when I get knocked down and that fire goes out momentarily, I'm right back up again in the morning because I'm ruled by Mars, and he'll kick me out of bed, So there's so many like lovely aspects. So I always say to people, and when you're learning astrology, like don't learn it from one source. Get multiple sources. And then when you're ready, find a teacher that resonates with you, read the reviews, go to classes, and like find your community, find your tribe. And like the best gift I think learning astrology formally gave me was it gave me permission to be myself, which was an astrologer, and also find my tribe. I have friends now who are astrologers. I had never met another living astrologer in Ireland until I set up my astrology page. And then I found another girl, a similar age to me, from a similar background from the southwest of Ireland. She was a bit like, I hate using the analogy of Little Britain, David, the only gay in the village. She was like, I'm the only astrologer in my village. I'm the only astrologer in my village. I realized, I wasn't so alone. And we became really good friends. We read each other's birth charts. And now we chat every day on WhatsApp, and we've met up loads. And I have a friend, a real living friend. She's flesh and bones, who's an astrologer, and she's not on a screen. And I think, how amazing. And I have to thank, I think, Pluto and Aquarius for that too, because when Pluto came into my third house, he brought all the astrologers into my life, and it was so scary at first. I was like, wow, I'm on YouTube with an astrologer, I'm on Instagram with an astrologer. Oh my god, I was all these people I had admired, yourself included, Mary. I was like, I found my community, and I was so afraid. And now they have welcomed me with open arms, and there's space for all of us here, no matter, bless the broken road that got me here, but no matter what road I took here and how long it took me to get here, I'm here now, and we've something to share and learn from each other. So it's such a lovely world, the astrology world, by and large, it is really lovely.
And I think it's important to focus on the parts that are lovely and not to be focused on the bits that aren't. And I think that's a raison d'etre to life as well. If we carry on, not you, but I'm just saying, if people were to carry on moaning about everything, where do you live? The most beautiful place in the world, and you are a beautiful person yourself too, but you're living in somewhere that is beautiful, just by the coast, the sea, and I live in a city, there's seas miles away from where I am. It's a beautiful city, mind. But that there is beauty in astrology, and I think we should be encouraging it and encouraging the positivities of it as well, and reassuring people that astrology doesn't have to be negative and shouldn't be negative. Why would any form of divination or therapy, or whatever you want to call astrology, why should that be negative and scary for people? I quite agree.
And I think it'd be like a collective. Oh, sorry, Mary. I think it'd be like a collective task for us with Pluto and Aquarius. Like, we'll be challenged now to basically tidy up astrology, maybe, and we might have to look at some parts of astrology that we maybe haven't liked to look at, and maybe regulate it a bit more, maybe not streamline it a bit more, because everybody, different strokes for different folks, whatever. But we might have to look at some things we don't like in our own community. In all wellness and holistic communities, all the non-conventional communities will come together, will get stronger. But I do think the networking will be important. No astrologer will be an island anymore now. It'll all be about working together in community and building a strong sense of community and mutual respect. And as you say, focusing more on the positives and all of our shared goals.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Darling, thank you so much for being with us today. How can people find you? What would be your address?
Find me is at Caitriona Astro on Instagram, or Caitriona Astro on TikTok, and I also have YouTube. I'm probably most active on my Instagram, and my website is caitrionaastro.eu. If anybody wants to book in for a reading, I've lots of availability for little mini readings now in 2025, and that's
these are the Marys that you call the Marys.
Yeah, the Marys are like my emergency reading based after a client called Mary. Yeah, she came to me for an emergency reading, and she inspired me to make this reading. And then I have other readings called the shadow sign, little mini readings where I go through the elemental balance and the most important things I see for a person.
Cool. We'll put all the links to how people can contact you. I'll put them on the podcast show notes, and they'll also be on YouTube in the description. And it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's just been amazing to chat to you. I could talk to you all night, as you probably can see.
Okay, thank you.